Hey folks, we conducted a poll of PlayStation fans pertaining to which Ghost of game they prefer. And the winner of the poll was... not you!
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
What's up, Space Pirates? This is your Admiral, the Dread Pirate Dr. Disaster. And do you want to know what's really funny? When even your enemies, the people who argue with you over everything, are put in a position where they are forced to admit that you are correct.
I can't believe I'm about to do this. This is killing me to do this. I'd rather slit my throat.
Well, that's what I have for you today here, folks, and it is quite delicious. As I'm sure everyone knows by now, there has been a major, massive conversation going on concerning the release of Ghost of Yotei and whether or not the game was a success or a failure, and whether or not people actually liked it compared to the original. And the conversation has gotten more than a little heated.
Hey, right back at you, bitch.
One of the biggest cheerleaders for Ghost of Yotei has been the outlet Push Square, which is unsurprising considering it is a Sony fanboy website which publishes PlayStation news. A few weeks ago, when Circana first published data for the sales numbers of Ghost of Yotei, this was their headline here, triumphantly announcing that the boycott of Ghost of Yotei, and I oppose the use of that term boycott in the first place because it implies organization, and the people on the cultural right are typically a pretty atomized and independent people, but anyhow, that's semantics. They were bragging that the so-called boycott failed, while conveniently ignoring the context that the sales figures that Yotei achieved in 3 weeks was matched by the game's predecessor in 3 days.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
Well, I'd like to give a special thanks to one of my viewers for emailing me this tip and bringing this to my attention, but it looks like Push Square did a series of polls talking about which Ghost of game their readers liked better, and keep in mind that the sort of people who read that outlet and who would even be aware of the poll's existence are going to be hopeless Sony fanboys. The numbers would be way worse for them if they opened this up to a less biased audience, but even the Sony fanboys had to admit that the things we were talking about, the story and the main character in Ghost of Tsushima, they are far superior. They have had to admit that a proper sequel to Jin Sakai, who was far more popular, would have been the proper decision. Alright, me hearties, make sure that you hit the like button on this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I've had a lot of people tell me that they have been unwillingly unsubscribed to the channel. Almost every day I hear from someone who says they didn't believe me when I talked about this phenomenon, but then they noticed that they themselves were unsubbed from the channel. I don't know why it happens, but I hear it a lot. So check into that and hit the notification bell while you're at it. Anyhow, let's take a look at the polling that Push Square conducted. I'm sure that it pained that outlet to have to publish the results because they have made it clear that they really want to own the chuds when it comes to the Ghost of Yotei situation. But even they have had to admit that moving on from Jin Sakai appears to have been a mistake. Their polling has betrayed them and proven our point that nobody gives a shit about this new character and that people were very invested in Jin Sakai. His story was gripping and there was a lot of room for expansion on his tale, and prior to the official announcement of Ghost of Yotei last year, I think the expectations across the board that the sequel they were working on would indeed be a proper Jin Sakai sequel. To be clear, the only reason to jump ship from such a popular character is because they wanted to hop aboard the female main protagonist train that had been rolling through the industry back in 2021 or so when they would have begun development of this game. So now, rather than build up a character that everyone loved, whose presence in the industry could have grown into something iconic like Nathan Drake or Kratos or something like that, instead of turning the Ghost of series into a character story and building up Jin Sakai, they transform the series into an anthology of different stories, and it is very telling that Sucker Punch has suggested that the next game they're working on, because they remain committed to being a single project studio, but the next game they're working on is not going to be another Ghost of game. They chose extremely poorly with the main character and story that they went with in Yotei, but with all of that in mind, let's take a look at the series of polls conducted by Push Square, which gauged which Ghost game people preferred, and that certainly did not go the way that Push Square wanted. The article starts off here saying, at the end of last week, we published a public poll asking Push Square readers to ruminate on Ghost of Yotei, and whether it really is a better game than its predecessor, Ghost of Tsushima. Nearly 10,000 users voted in our poll, making it one of the biggest we've ever ran here on the site, and with that in mind, the results are made even more interesting. Overall, opinions appear to be quite divided. 32% of readers said they liked Yotei more than Tsushima, while 45% prefer Tsushima over Yotei. The other 23% said they couldn't decide between the two. So once again, even their own readers, who are going to be much more heavily skewed toward wanting to own the chuds, they couldn't bring themselves to give Yotei the nod. And the subsequent polls that I'm going to show you here are hilarious to me because they clearly back up everything that the chuds have been claiming about the game. The PlayStation fanboys might publicly argue with us, but deep down, they agree. This next poll suggests that people think the actual gameplay of Yotei is better than Tsushima, which is unsurprising considering that the game is 5 years newer. I haven't played the new game myself, but I've heard pretty much across the board that the controls have been improved in at least minor ways. The article says things get a lot more lopsided when breaking the two titles down into separate elements, gameplay and story. When it comes to gameplay, Yotei is the clear winner, with a massive 82% of users saying that the sequel is an improvement over Tsushima, 23% believe that the gameplay is better in every way, and only 7% think it's actually a step backwards from its predecessor. Notice how they are trying to emphasize this point before they are forced to show the polls that are not in Yotei's favor. There is a reason that they are showing the results of this poll before they show the results of the next two. The article says next, opinions pretty much flip with regards to story, however, with Tsushima getting the most support. 58% said Jin's initial adventure tells the better tale, with a chunky 30% of those users claiming that the first game's narrative is far superior. Just 9% of readers said that Yotei has a much better story. Like I said, there is a reason they presented the results of the poll in this order and spent time really emphasizing the fact that the gameplay was improved in Yotei, because that is the only way the game can be considered a win over the original. And keep in mind that for all of these questions, they had at least 7,000 some people answering. So this isn't some podunk little poll. This is going to be fairly representative of the sentiment of even Sony fanboys. They all agree that Tsushima's story is clearly better than Yotei. Just imagine how lopsided those figures would be if they opened it up to a general audience. Anyhow, here is the last poll they conducted. It says here, finally, we had a showdown between the two games' protagonists in a direct head-to-head poll poll between Atsu and Jin, Tsushima's lead ended up dominating the vote. The disgraced samurai was crowned the better main character by a whopping 71% of readers. Intriguing stuff considering how fresh Ghost of Yote is at this point in time. We'd be really interested in seeing whether these opinions change over the months and years ahead, and as they said, this is intriguing, this is interesting, because Atsu is the fresh new face, and for the sort of Sony fanboys who read this outlet and will have responded to the poll, they are going to be generally skewed, predisposed to be enamored with the flavor of the month that Sony just put out. But recency bias was not enough to make even these people claim that Atsu is anywhere near as popular or just as good as Jin. In time, I imagine that polls like this would widen the gap even further, and this is the crux of what the chuds have been saying about this game all along. Forget all the other controversy with Charlie Kirk and everything else surrounding the game. The question I have is, in a world where Ghost of Tsushima exists, why in the bloody hell would I ever need to play Yote? I don't care about improving the gameplay. I enjoyed Tsushima. I don't give a shit about some improved controls. That isn't enough to make me shell out $70 to play a character that I have no interest in. I have no interest in investing in a new character. It was a letdown that Jin Sakai was no longer the main man, and Sucker Punch clearly dropped the ball by doing this shit. This is like if Halo decided to use someone other than Master Chief in their second game, or if in God of War they moved on from Kratos in game number 2. For some titles, that just doesn't work, and clearly Ghost of Tsushima was one of those games. But I'm gonna leave it there. What do you think? Is anyone surprised at the results of these polls? Drop your thoughts into the comment section below, and we will talk there. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your Admiral is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.